You are not tired. You are not unmotivated. You are grieving the life you abandoned, and you don't even realize it. There's a version of you that was supposed to be free, bold, on fire for something real. But now, you wake up every day pretending not to hear that voice. You fake stability. You smile through the numbness. You call this survival. But deep down, you know you're dying inside. And if you keep going like this, you won't just waste time. You will bury the only version of you that ever mattered. Because that dream you had, that fire you felt, it was never random. It was the most honest version of you, trying to speak before the world told you to shut up and follow the script. Covey once said, "Don't prioritize what's on your schedule. Prioritize your life, or someone else will." And that's what's been happening. You're not living your life. You're following a path that was handed to you, and quietly dying on the inside. This video is your interruption. In the next minutes, I'll show you the invisible patterns that are killing your purpose, why motivation isn't enough, and how to wake up the version of you that's still alive under all the noise. And at the end, I'll give you one decision. Just one, but it might change everything. So don't click away. Don't go back to pretending. This is your moment. You didn't kill your dream in one big moment. You did it in pieces. Quietly. Gradually. Every time you said maybe later. Every time you said I can't. Every time you convinced yourself it was safer not to try. And now, you wake up every morning with a part of you missing. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it. That silent ache that something is off, something's not right. You look at your life, and it all seems fine. But deep down, you know fine is the reason you're suffocating. There was a time when you believed in something more. A vision, a mission, a version of you that burned with life. You didn't just exist, you felt alive. And maybe you were young, or naive, or foolish. But you were you. Then came the pressure, the responsibilities, the fear of failing. And slowly, you started negotiating pieces of yourself in exchange for approval, comfort, routine. You started silencing the voice inside that whispered, "This isn't who we are." You buried it under deadlines, under expectations, under excuses. And now it only screams when the world is quiet. Late at night, when no one's watching. When you look in the mirror and feel like a stranger. You didn't lose your dream because it was impossible. You lost it because you stopped believing you had permission to live it. But here's the truth you don't want to face. That version of you isn't gone. You're just afraid to meet them again. Because if you admit that you still want it, you'll have to face the pain of not chasing it. You'll have to explain why you gave up. And maybe you don't have a good reason. Maybe you just stopped. But that's not the end of your story. That's the start of your return. Because if you've made it this far, if your heart still aches when you think about what could have been, then something inside you is still alive. And it's not asking for a miracle. It's asking for you. Not the you that plays it safe. Not the you that shrinks to fit expectations. The real you. The one who still believes, even if it hurts. This isn't about motivation. It's about identity. Because the dream you had, it was never random. It was a reflection of the real you trying to surface. And you keep waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect courage. But none of that is coming. What is coming is another year of pretending. Another version of yourself that feels more like a mask than a life. And the longer you stay there, the further you drift from who you were born to become. So let me ask you something no one else will. Are you ready to stop betraying yourself? Are you ready to stop calling it normal when it's actually numbness? Because if you don't decide soon, life will keep deciding for you. And it won't choose the dream. It will choose the safe, small, slowly dying version of you. The one you already know too well. You don't need more time. You need more truth. And the truth is, you still want it. You still believe in something more. You just got tired of carrying it alone. But you're not alone anymore. Not here. Not now. Because this is the moment you stop hiding. This is the moment you stop postponing your life like it's a task on a to-do list you'll never get to. And if this is hitting you somewhere deep, if these words feel like they were meant for you, then stop scrolling. Stop pushing it away. Subscribe now. For you. So you never again forget that you're capable of building the life you once dreamed and still do. And once you do that, once you let that dream breathe again, you'll feel something shift. Subtle but real. Like a door cracking open. Like a part of you finally coming back home. But here's the thing. Once you open that door, something else shows up. and it doesn't want you to move forward. It wants you to stay right where you are. We need to talk about that next. They told you to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to not dream too big, because life doesn't work that way. And you listened, not because you agreed, but because they said it often enough that you started to believe it was true. From an early age, you were taught what's acceptable, what's safe, what's possible for someone like you. And every time you tried to push beyond that, someone pushed back harder. It wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came with a smile, a teacher suggesting a more practical goal, a parent warning you not to take too many risks, a friend laughing at your ambition, like it was something to be embarrassed about. And little by little, you shrank. Not because you wanted to, but because you were trained to think that shrinking was smart. That comfort was success. That blending in meant you were doing things right. But what if all of that was a lie? What if the version of you that's struggling right now is struggling because it was never meant to live that way? What if your sadness isn't a flaw? It's a signal, a sign that you're living too far below your potential, that you've accepted someone else's definition of life, and it doesn't fit your soul. Think about it. You were never taught how to dream and build. You were taught how to comply, how to seek permission, how to measure your worth by what others think of your choices. So when your dreams started to fade, no one noticed. Because it wasn't in the plan. It wasn't on the checklist. It didn't fit into the mold they built for you, a mold you never agreed to, but followed anyway. You work hard. You show up. You do what you're supposed to. But still, something feels missing. And you tell yourself to be grateful because others have less. But gratitude isn't a prison. It's not meant to silence your hunger. It's meant to deepen your awareness of what you're capable of. And you're capable of more. But to access that more, you have to confront a truth most people never dare to face. The system was never designed for your freedom. It was designed for your obedience. That's why breaking free feels wrong at first. Because the moment you start acting on your own terms, everything around you resists. People question your decisions. They say you've changed. They say you're being selfish, unrealistic, unstable. But here's what they don't understand, and maybe what you've forgotten. You don't owe anyone the death of your dream just to make them comfortable. You weren't put here to follow instructions. You were put here to lead your own life, to make decisions that light you up, to build something that feels like it's truly yours, even if no one claps for you along the way. This world doesn't reward authenticity right away. It rewards performance, repetition, familiarity. And that's why the people who change their lives and change others often start alone. But you're not truly alone, because every time you take one honest step toward the life you want, you reconnect with a part of yourself that's been waiting patiently, the part that remembers. You've always known what you want, even if you've forgotten how to say it out loud, even if you've buried it under years of doing what's expected. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. And you're not broken. You've just been conditioned. Conditioned to settle, to doubt, to comply. But conditioning can be undone. And that's what this process is. A reawakening, a return. And maybe it starts small, waking up earlier, saying no when something doesn't align, writing down your dream again, not to share it, just to remind yourself it still exists. Even the smallest act of self-alignment sends a message to the parts of you that gave up. We're not done yet. I'm still in here. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You need to stop believing them when they say you're not meant for more. The moment you start trusting your own inner compass again, instead of the noise that's been shaping your decisions, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with your truth. You stop apologizing for wanting more. And you start realizing that everything they told you to fear was really just a way to keep you quiet. Let them say it's too late. Let them say you've changed. Let them stay where they are. But you're moving. Because the life you dreamed didn't die. It just got tired of waiting for you. And now, you're finally listening. You thought silence meant peace. But the truth is, some silences are suffocating. The silence of dreams you never spoke about. The silence of parts of you that you buried to keep the peace. The silence of routines that feel like slow erosion, wearing you down day by day, but never loud enough to make you scream. You convinced yourself this calm was maturity, that not wanting too much was wisdom, that losing your fire meant you were finally being reasonable. But now that the noise is gone, you're left with something heavier. Stillness? Maybe, but not peace. Because real peace doesn't feel like this. It doesn't feel like dread when you wake up. It doesn't feel like you're watching your life happen from the outside. It doesn't feel like you're constantly trying to remember who you used to be before you started calling your numbness normal. You've silenced yourself for so long that now, even your mind whispers. And when you try to remember what lit you up, all you hear is static. But silence isn't always healing. Sometimes, silence is self-abandonment. You don't speak what matters because you're afraid it will ruin the stability you've built. You don't ask for more because you think wanting is dangerous. You don't move because standing still feels safer, even if you're rotting in place. And the worst part? You're surrounded by people who think you're doing great. Because you're calm, you're composed, you're functioning. But functioning isn't living. Surviving isn't thriving. And silence isn't always strength. There's a part of you that's been screaming in a language you forgot how to understand. It shows up in your restlessness, in your procrastination, in your low-grade sadness that never fully goes away. You've trained yourself not to listen, not to feel too deeply, not to want too loudly, because the world taught you that stillness means you're doing things right, that if you're not in crisis, you should be grateful. That craving more is selfish, or immature, or unrealistic. But the truth is, you were never meant to feel this empty. There's a fire inside you that didn't go out. You just stopped feeding it. You started calling your own voice too much. You started calling your own needs too complicated. You started calling your own dream too late. And so you shrank. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to disappear behind a version of yourself that looked acceptable, but didn't feel true. And maybe you don't even know who you are anymore. Maybe all you know is what you're not. Not excited, not fulfilled, not aligned. That's not failure. That's feedback. And the feedback is clear. You've confused silence with safety, stillness with peace, avoidance with maturity. But now you're starting to remember. You're starting to feel something again. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's rage. Maybe it's hunger. Good. Because those feelings, they're proof that you're still alive, still reachable, still connected to the version of you that refuses to die in the quiet. You don't need to burn everything down. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to stop lying to yourself. Stop saying this is enough when it clearly isn't. Stop calling your exhaustion discipline. Stop mistaking silence for peace when it's actually suppression. You want real peace? Start by telling the truth. Even if it's ugly. Even if it's messy. Even if no one claps for it. Because the moment you tell the truth, even just to yourself, something shifts. The numbness cracks. The fog lifts. And for the first time in a long time, you feel yourself again. Not the perfectly composed, socially acceptable version. You, the one who still aches for more. The one who's tired of pretending. The one who's finally ready to stop shrinking. And once that truth rises to the surface, there's no turning back. Because now, you can hear it again. The voice you thought was gone. The one that says, I'm still here. I never left. And I'm not done yet. You've gotten good at pretending. So good, in fact, that most people have no idea how far you've drifted from yourself. You smile at the right times. You show up where you're expected. You perform the role, and from the outside, it works. But inside, you're disconnected, exhausted, and quietly asking a question you don't even know how to voice. When did I become someone who just copes? The truth is, you've built your life around protecting an illusion. Not out of malice, not out of laziness, out of fear. Because the moment you admit something's wrong, you'd have to face everything that's been left undone. The choices you postponed, the potential you never activated, the voice you ignored so many times, it finally went quiet. And that kind of honesty, it's brutal. Because it shatters the defense that's kept you safe all these years. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're functioning. There's a difference. Functioning is going through the motions, hitting deadlines, smiling through discomfort, numbing what you can't explain. Fine is the lie you tell yourself so you don't have to change anything. Because change requires loss. Loss of certainty, loss of comfort, loss of the identity you built to survive. And yet, the only way out is through that fire. You say you want freedom. You say you want alignment. You say you want peace. But peace doesn't come from avoiding the truth. It comes from walking straight into it, even when it burns. You're not stuck because you're incapable. You're stuck because you're hiding from yourself. You're hiding behind the version of you that's easier to manage. The version that doesn't ask too many questions. The version that keeps the peace externally while collapsing internally. But your soul is not fooled. That part of you, the one that still remembers who you really are, it's been watching this entire time. Watching you settle. Watching you conform. Watching you dilute yourself to be more acceptable, more manageable, more predictable. And still it waits. Because no matter how long you run, you can't escape the ache of self-betrayal. That ache you feel when you lie in bed and think, this can't be it. That restlessness that shows up when everything seems okay, but nothing feels right. That's your signal. It's not depression. It's not burnout. It's not a phase. It's the real you trying to break through the mask. But to let that version out, you have to stop lying. Stop pretending you're fine with mediocrity. Stop pretending you don't care anymore. Stop pretending you don't want it just because you're scared you won't get it. This is not about being reckless. It's about being honest. Because until you tell the truth about how much you've compromised, how often you've abandoned yourself to be liked, how many times you've shrunk to avoid judgment, nothing changes. You will keep calling it discipline when it's actually self-denial. You'll keep calling it maturity when it's really resignation. You'll keep calling it balance when it's just fear in disguise. But the moment you say it, I'm tired of hiding. I'm ready to stop lying to myself. I want to remember who I was before I gave up. That's when things start to move. Not externally, internally. That's when you begin to reclaim the part of you that never stopped believing. The part that still knows what you were meant for, even if you've forgotten. And it won't all come back at once. There won't be a lightning strike. No perfect clarity. Just a subtle shift. Like breathing deeper. Like standing taller. Like recognizing yourself again in the mirror, even just for a moment. That's the work. Not changing who you are, but removing everything you became to survive a life that was never yours. You've tried everything else. The waiting, the rationalizing, the hoping someone else would fix it for you. Now try the one thing that actually works. Radical honesty, even if it breaks you at first. Because sometimes, breaking is the only way to get free. You keep telling yourself you're afraid to fail. But that's not it. You're not afraid to fall. You're afraid to rise and not recognize the person you see. You're afraid of the cost, of the discomfort, of becoming someone who finally demands more and can't go back to pretending again. But here's the truth you're avoiding. You're not afraid of death. You're afraid of living fully and realizing you've wasted years on a version of life that never felt like yours. You say you want more time, but what would you even do with it? Because if you woke up tomorrow with a blank page, no limits, no expectations, would you know what to write? Or have you been surviving for so long that you forgot what it means to truly live? Most people aren't dying from illness. They're dying from hesitation, from delay, from the slow erosion of their soul under the weight of decisions they didn't make or never followed through on. They say things like someday, not realizing that someday is where dreams go to rot. They say later, as if time is guaranteed, as if life owes them a second chance. But the truth is brutal. You don't get unlimited rewrites. You get one story. And while you wait for the perfect chapter to begin, the pages are turning, with or without your permission. You weren't meant to live on autopilot. You weren't meant to drag yourself through life like it's a punishment. You were meant to feel it. The beauty, the ache, the fullness. But now, you're half alive, numb on the inside, polite on the outside. And somewhere deep down, you know this isn't it. This can't be it. But change feels like a threat, not a solution. Because to change, you'd have to face what you've ignored. The dreams you buried. The chances you didn't take. The parts of you that have been quietly grieving the life you postponed. And that grief? It's real. Even if no one else sees it. Even if you laugh and smile and say you're just tired. That heaviness in your chest isn't fatigue. It's the weight of all the what-ifs you've refused to unpack. You've become a master of endurance. You can handle pressure. You can manage expectations. You can survive chaos. But can you face your own longing? Can you sit in the silence and admit, I want more. I was meant for more. And I'm done pretending otherwise. That kind of honesty, it terrifies people. Because once you say it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to normal. You can't keep doing what you've always done, not without it hurting even more. But maybe that's exactly what you need. Maybe the pain isn't the problem. Maybe it's the invitation. A wake-up call from the version of you that refuses to die in the safety of routine. Because that version is still in there, underneath the exhaustion, the compromise, the delay. They're not gone. They're just buried. And right now, they're asking you, are we going to do this? Or are we going to let another year slip by while calling it stability? You know what instability really is. Living a life that doesn't fit you and trying to pretend it does. That's chaos. That's suffering. That's death in slow motion. And yet, it's common, acceptable, encouraged. People will cheer you on for being busy, for being responsible, for being selfless. But rarely will anyone stop and ask if you're actually fulfilled. That's your job. No one else can do that for you. And if you don't ask now, you'll wake up one day in a life you don't recognize and realize you built it out of fear. That's the real risk. Not failing, but succeeding at something that never meant anything to you. Climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. Becoming everything the world wanted and nothing you needed. You still have time, but not forever. And that's not a threat. That's your advantage if you stop wasting it. You don't need permission. You don't need certainty. You need truth. And a willingness to walk toward it, even if you're scared. Especially if you're scared. Because courage isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's choosing to show up while shaking, while doubting, while questioning everything. It's whispering, I don't know what happens next, but I know I can't stay here. That whisper, that's your life trying to live again. And if you ignore it long enough, it will quiet down. But not because it's gone, because it gave up on being heard. Don't let that happen. Everyone thinks courage looks loud. They picture bold declarations, huge leaps, standing on stages, walking away from everything overnight. But most courage isn't cinematic. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't even come with clarity. It comes with shaking hands. A quiet decision at 5 a.m. A choice no one sees, but that changes everything. Courage is saying no when you've always said yes. It's starting again without needing validation. It's getting honest, truly honest, about how far you've drifted from yourself. And choosing, little by little, to come back. You don't need to become someone else. You need to stop betraying the person you were before you became afraid. That's where your power lives. Not in being perfect, but in being true. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to remember who you were before you started filtering your fire to make other people comfortable. Before you learned to shrink. Before you decided that playing small was easier than failing at big. Before the world convinced you that comfort was safer than meaning. But there's nothing safe about spending your whole life hiding from yourself. You think you're protecting your heart by playing it safe. But all you're really doing is prolonging the pain. The pain of knowing you're not where you're supposed to be. The pain of feeling invisible in your own life. The pain of constantly editing your desires so they don't make waves. That's not peace. That's a prison. And the only way out is not some massive, life-altering event. It's a single, silent moment where you decide, I'm not going to keep doing this to myself. That decision, it won't feel magical. It might not even feel real. But it's the seed. And if you water it, with action, with honesty, with consistency, it will grow into a version of you that you actually recognize. One small act of self-alignment can shift everything. Not because the world changes overnight, but because you do. And when you shift, your world follows. You start waking up differently. You start walking into rooms without shrinking. You stop needing people to approve of your dreams before you take them seriously. You begin to show up as someone who doesn't negotiate with their own soul. Someone who keeps promises to themselves. Someone who doesn't apologize for existing fully. And that kind of person, they don't need noise. They don't need permission. They walk quietly, but their presence is undeniable. That's courage. It's not in what you post. It's not in the speech you give. It's in the 1,000 small moments when no one's watching. And you still choose to be who you were meant to be. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's lonely. Even when it makes other people uncomfortable. Because at some point, you realize, it's not your job to make everyone else okay with your growth. It's your job to stop dying for their approval. You've been quiet long enough. Not just on the outside, but inside. You've muted your own voice to hear theirs more clearly. You've downplayed your dreams so they didn't feel threatened. You've slowed yourself down to match their pace, when you were built to move faster, deeper, further. That's over now. Not because you're angry, not because you need to prove anything, but because you're tired of making yourself sick with silence. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward while fear screams in your ear. It's feeling everything and still choosing truth, still choosing movement, still choosing you. The world doesn't need another person pretending to be fine. It needs one more person who's done pretending. Someone who's ready to rebuild, to start where they are, to stop asking for permission to live. You don't have to scream. You don't have to announce it. You just have to stop running from the life that keeps calling your name. You've heard it for years, and it's not going to stop, because it was never just a dream. It was a mirror, a glimpse of who you were supposed to be all along. And now, you're finally ready to stop turning away. You've been asleep with your eyes open, moving, producing, performing, but not really here. Not fully, not in a way that feels alive. You've done what you were told. You've played the part. And still, something has always felt off. Not because you're broken, but because you've been living a life that was never designed for your soul. And now, finally, you've started to remember. That feeling in your chest right now, that ache, that pull, that's not fear. That's your real self resurfacing. The one that never stopped wanting. The one you pushed down every time you chose to settle. But it's still there, still intact, still waiting for you to stop apologizing for existing fully. You don't need another decade of detours. You don't need another year of excuses. You need to decide that this is the moment you stop postponing your life like it's optional. Because the version of you that you keep seeing in your dreams, the one who lives with clarity, conviction, freedom, they're not a fantasy. They're a memory, a part of you that once led the way, before the world convinced you to follow instead. You are not here to die with the best of you still locked inside. You're here to become the kind of person who lives like it matters, who walks into rooms knowing their life is aligned with their values, even when no one understands it, who stops negotiating with mediocrity because they've tasted what truth feels like and they're not willing to go back. This is your edge now, right here, not tomorrow, not next year, now. This is where you decide whether you'll keep telling the story you've outgrown, or start writing the one you were born for. Not by changing everything overnight, but by changing one thing, your relationship with yourself. You've looked everywhere else for permission, approval, validation, and none of it filled the emptiness. Because the real wound wasn't that others didn't believe in you. It's that you stopped believing in yourself. You stopped choosing yourself. You stopped showing up for the version of you who still believes this life is worth fighting for. But now you know. Now you see it. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The illusion is gone. The mask has cracked. And the silence? It's no longer tolerable. So take that first step. The small one. The quiet one. The one that looks like nothing, but feels like everything. Don't do it for the world. Don't do it for recognition. Do it because your life depends on it. Because it does. This isn't about being extraordinary. It's about being real. Real with your fear. Real with your voice. Real with your choices. It's about finally being someone your soul can trust again. That's how you build a life that doesn't need escaping. That's how you become the kind of person who doesn't wait for miracles, because they understand they are the miracle. As soon as they stop hiding from themselves. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where your turning point begins. And if these words stirred something in you, if they made you feel even a glimpse of the version of you you lost, then don't let that feeling fade. Subscribe now. Not to this channel, to yourself, to the commitment of no longer going back to sleep while life passes you by. Because from this moment on, every step you take is either a return to who you've been, or a quiet rebellion toward who you were always meant to be. Choose the rebellion. And when you do, you'll notice something else. Another layer you haven't touched yet. Another voice that's still buried, still waiting, still calling. But that's something we'll uncover next.